Well, anyway, welcome. How are you doing today? Good? Yeah? Let's try that again. Hi, how are you doing today? Good. You speak. Excellent. That's good. So this is a talk which is called the Primadonnas of the 21st century, which is us, developers. Is everyone familiar with the word prima donna? Okay. My questions that I've normally, how many of you have ever been to a session that I've given before? Right, so you know they're quite interactive, and I like to ask questions, right? And the questions are normally limited to yes or no. Okay, it's not really deep philosophical questions that you need to think about. So let me try that again. How many of you know what a prima donna is? That wasn't a yes or no, it was, I do. Okay, good. I want to set your expectations for this session. So I want you to realize what you have to expect here, I mean what you're going to get. If you feel you're in the wrong room, I won't be offended if you get up and leave, but do leave now. Afterwards, we will close the doors. Do leave me your contact details also. The expectations for this session are nothing, right? Don't expect to learn anything. Nothing like that. I mean, this session is a little bit about me being fed up. It's a little bit me being pissed off, right? And if you don't know me, I'm a developer. I am a technical evangelist at a company called JetBrains. And I'm also working at that company. I'm not only an evangelist for them. I didn't see that one coming myself. Anyway, not the working part. I mean that part of the slide. And today, I'm not going to be a developer. Today, I'm going to step outside of my role of the developer. I mean, part of my job as a technical evangelist is to... by the way, does anybody have any issues with profanity? I'm guessing no. Right. So part of my job is to complain to the team based on the feedback I receive from the community, right? Or, as I like to call it, bitch at the team. And I'm pissed off, and this is my little baby. He's my third little son, right? And it took me quite a while to take a picture of that. And I tell you that when I was my wife was really pissed off because I was kind of mistreating him. He kept trying to eat the paper. And I've been pissed off a lot of times. And it's a kind of a thing, it's like if you're not familiar with the word pissed off in English, it means really angry, okay? And I've been angry a lot of times at a lot of things that I've seen in the going on. But I don't want to talk about me anymore. That's all you need to really know about me. I want to talk about you guys, right? Because remember, I'm not a developer this year, right? I'm no longer a developer. Or as we like to call them, developers, right? In all caps, right? How many of you actually know who Steve Sinofsky is? Right, he's the guy behind Windows. So to put another way, Steve Sinofsky is the guy that makes money for Microsoft, right? And rumor has it, he's not a big fan of certain technologies, like, for example, Silverlight. Whatever happened to Silverlight, anyway? Oh, it was this passing phase in our lives, wasn't it? So, yeah, a lot of them have actually gone and worked now under Sinofsky. So I'm wondering if this developers should now be mobile phone users, or consumers. It's like we're out of the picture. But, oh wait. Remember these guys? These were respectful people, not like us. They were, you had to respect those people. This is a picture of a developer. It was quite upsetting when I saw that first. We were at a marketing and sales meeting at JetBrains in Prague, and my colleague that works in sales, he was doing a presentation. And he said, I just want to talk about developers, and he put this picture up. I'm like, so this is what you think of us? Really, this is how you envision us, right? You know, with your fancy greased back hair as a salesman normally has. But this is also a developer. This guy and this guy, they're actually quite funny, right? Because these are real developers, they're real people. It's a movie called Erlang. That's a real movie. You can watch it on YouTube. they talk about Erlang. And if any of you have seen Monty Python, if you actually watch this, it feels like a Monty Python script. You know, you're waiting for any moment for John Cleese to make an appearance. And he doesn't. It's an actual movie. They're promoting Erlang, right? If you watch that movie, you realize why it's a bad idea for developers to go into marketing or into sales. Right? It's just horrendous. It's really, really bad. But we've also had, you know, we've also had our share of kind of fame in Hollywood, right? If you go, I mean, you're all round about my age, right? You're all over, well, near just about your midlife crisis, around 39, 40. Anyone? No? That was a hard question. That was actually, you have to give an age, right? Okay. So, does anyone remember this guy? It was from a movie called Revenge of the Nerds. Yeah? No? Oh, okay. Do you know this guy? Yeah? Okay, you know him. He was this guy that fooled us all into that Facebook was going to be the next big thing. We're all hoping that it isn't. But those are all, you know, famous people. I want to talk about real people. I have one female developer on there, Kelly, friend of mine. Last time I showed this, people criticized me and said, why are you stereotyping developers as men? Isn't that sexist? I said, no, that is, I asked on Twitter, if you're a developer and you want your picture on my slide, send me one. And only men did, right? But I put her on as well, just so that nobody feels that it's being sexist. Okay? But those are real developers. A couple of them actually work at JetBrains. This guy over here, he's the first employee of JetBrains. Works on IntelliJ. This is the guy behind ReSharper. If you know, you've heard of ReSharper, right? Yeah. I won't make any publicity, but if you're doing coding now. Anyway, we kind of start to see that we're being categorized into different categories of developers, right? How many of you here would call yourself enterprise developers? Proud of it, are you? And you're like, me, I'm an enterprise developer. Right. So enterprise developers are what? They work on, not necessarily in enterprises, but they work on the average, boring kind of software, right? What do you work on? For testing. What about you? Healthcare. You? Logistics, right? Typical boring enterprise, squarey kind of scenario, right? So there's only 3 people that work on enterprise software. The rest of you are what? Hipsters? Right? Because there are the hipsters now, right? You know, if you're familiar with a hipster, if you go to Wikipedia and look up hipster, that is what you should look like. Okay? And you probably are using a Macintosh. Take no offense at this. This is just I'm just in the role here, okay? I'm just trying to be neutral. I've got a PC in the back as well. So the hipsters are taking over our profession, right? I mean, you know, most of us went to university, and now these little dudes come along and think that Python's the next best thing. JavaScript. Who likes JavaScript? Who likes JavaScript? Okay. Hey, I proved my point. One guy. The rest are just afraid of admitting it now. It's a horrible language, right? You've got to admit, JavaScript is horrible, right? And we keep trying to, you know, patch it up to try and make it a good language, but just screw it, dump it. It's over. Forget about it. It's the next assembly. Move on. Use something else. VB. No, I'm joking. Don't use VB. And then you've got SharePoint, right? SharePoint is where development basically dies. But you make a lot of money. Yeah? A friend of mine, Sahil, he actually said, I don't know whether to call myself a developer or a debugger. Because all I do is just debug SharePoint. Right? And the highlight of your development experience in SharePoint is how to make a list. And how to make that list look pretty. And the biggest challenge is how to make an AJAX call with that list. So, yeah, you make good money, but, you know, It's kind of boring life. Now, Microsoft has recently caught wind of this hipster thing, right? They want to attract all the hipsters into their camp, right? Because they've seen that this Apple issue is cool, and that everyone's going over to the open source movement, and they're doing all this JavaScript and everything. So they've done that. This is when Azure was launched, this was the front page. I mean, everybody will agree with me that that is a typical hipster. Yes? None of us walk around here with blue hats, right? But normally hipsters do, okay? And if I'm not mistaken, that looks pretty much like a Mac, right? And Azure is all about, if you go to Azure website now, it's no longer about .NET, right? Microsoft, if you haven't noticed, it's no longer about .NET. It was .NET 15 days ago. Right? It's now about PHP, JavaScript, Java. It's about Azure, right? It's about hosting. It's about cloud. It's about services. Yeah? For them, it makes no difference. In fact, go to the Azure website. How many of you have been to the Azure website? Go to it. The first thing you're going to see is, what development platform are you using? Is it .NET? Is it Java? Is it PHP? Click here, right? .NET has now become just another runtime platform for Microsoft. Okay? So we've got the hipsters. And this is where we're all leading. There's also, of course, the ninja developers. Now, it's in its own category. Be a ninja developer, right? I also saw today an advert in my inbox, but I don't want to point out specific companies, but I saw an advert in my inbox which was be an agile ninja. So it's no longer just be a developer ninja, it's be an agile ninja as well. How many of you know Joe the plumber? Does Joe the plumber come to your house and say, hey, I'm Joe, I'm the ninja plumber, right? Or your doctor says, dude, I am such a ninja, right? When I do brain surgery, I'm the biggest ninja ever. I mean, no other profession seriously categorizes itself as ninjas, except us. Yeah? And then we've got Hollywood, right? The rock star developer. Yeah? We're rock stars. You know, I do a lot of talking at conferences, which means that I do a lot of traveling, right? And I always say that my life is exactly like that of a rock star, without the sex, drugs, rock and roll, money, fame. Otherwise, it's exactly the same. That's about as close as we are to being rock stars, right? But we still have this rock star mentality, and part of that is promoted by this thing called Twitter. How many of you are on Twitter? Right, we're micro-celebrities on Twitter, right? We start with like 1 follower, 10 followers, 30 followers, 90 followers, 400 followers, 600 followers. Jesus, I have something interesting to say. I have 3,000 people following me on Twitter. This gives us a sense of, wow, I must be important, you know? People are actually listening to me. I am saying valuable things. I'm a valuable part of the community, contributing in a good sense to the entire ecosystem. I must be. I've got 50,000 followers. Yeah? This guy's got, last time I checked, 226,000 followers. And all he says is bong, bong, bong. And this was like taken, what, 3 months ago? I can guarantee you that, you know, go now on, it's probably around 450,000 followers. And all he says is bong, bong, bong. I think it's an application. I don't think someone's actually sitting there on the hour and saying bong. So it puts your follower count into perspective, right? Am I really saying interesting things? But it does wonders for our egos. And of course, if you want to not follow Big Ben, there are very similar characteristics like him, characters. There's the common squirrel, the office chair, and the feral pigeon, who have their good share of followers, right? And I really am interested in how Twitter categorizes that similar to Big Ben is the office chair. No, seriously, I mean, how does it say that it's similar? What does the office chair actually do? But it's made us expert at not doing anything, right? At absolutely and completely wasting our time and having completely useless arguments. And if that wasn't bad enough, how many of you know of a program called Big Brother? Or X Factor? Or Pop Idol? You've heard of these things? Yeah? So Microsoft has come up with one. Did you know that? It's called Be the Next Microsoft Employee. And it's a reality show. I'm not kidding you. It's a reality show where they get 4 people and some judges. And your mission is to become the next Microsoft employee. Like as if working at Microsoft wasn't bad enough, now you've got to humiliate yourself in the process. Right? And it's promoting this whole rock star, oh, I'm famous, oh, this, oh, that. And it's like, why? But it's good fun, right? We're all doing it. It's good, and it's because we love our jobs. I mean, face it, how many of you are in this profession for the money? Apart from the SharePoint developers or debuggers. Put your hand down in shame. We do it for the love of it. How many of you are in this because you love it, you enjoy it? Yeah, because it's fun, right? Because seriously, in all seriousness, we got a good job, right? We are kind of like, you know, it's exciting what we do. And we care about our jobs, right? And back in the old days, you know, I mean, again, a lot of us go back a long time. Back in the old days, we used to do things. Remember those days when we used to actually get things done? We used to ship stuff. And then one day, one fine day, and it's ironic that they put me on the Agile track when I'm going to bitch at the Agile movement. But anyway, one fine day they came up with the manifesto of Agile software development, right? How many of you know this manifesto? How many of you have it stuck on your walls in your offices? Swear by it, right? Solid principles. How many of you know the solid principles? How many of you got posters with the solid principles in your office? Go on, admit it. How many of you have little Scrum cards or planning poker cards? Yep, you know, there you go. You know, we do it, right? And we want our own logo on it as well. So we have individuals and interactions over what? Processes and tools. Working software over comprehensive documentation. Customer collaboration over contract negotiation. Responding to change over following a plan. And this has taught us many beautiful and wonderful things in this life, right? It has taught us, above all, individuals and interaction over process and tools. Yes? How many of you agree with that? That's not a lot. Scrum. Who does Scrum? It's good, isn't it? You know Scrum was like last year, right? It's no longer about Scrum anymore. Scrum is you have your product backlog, and you have your sprint backlog, and you have your daily Scrum meetings, right? We do Scrum. We do stand-ups. We sit down at the stand-ups, but we do Scrum. I used to do Scrum training years back when I was stupid and naive. And I'm still stupid and naive, but I'm just saying years back. And I mean, this was a typical scenario. I used to go to a customer, and I would say to them, okay, this is Scrum, blah, blah, blah. I had one customer, which was fascinating. I went to him, I said, this is Scrum, this is how you do it. We worked for about a week together. I left. About 2 months later, I go back, check on them. I said, how's it going? Oh, we've written this fantastic software to manage our Scrum process. I said, okay. Why did you do that? Oh, well, we need the software. Yeah, but you don't write tools. Yeah, I know, but we can do it better. Right? When did you start this? The day after you left. He really did. He actually started working on a software tool to manage the Scrum process the day after I left with absolutely no experience on Scrum. I said, right. what else have you been doing in terms of Scrum? Well, we've got these little magnets where we can put our little Post-its, and the magnets have got the company logo on. Fantastic, right? Are you doing any kind of things in terms of, how is your code improved? Oh, we're not doing that yet. We just want to take this step by step. So what exactly are you doing with Scrum? Well, we've started with the meetings, and we've got these fantastic planning poker cards, which are also branded by our company. Yeah? And it was a question of, we got so involved in the process that we were forgetting what we were actually trying to do. And this is not an isolated thing. I see this over and over again, right? They start to become so involved in the process that they forget many of the things that they're trying to do. And, of course, that doesn't work for them. Well, because apart from, other issues, I am not a certified Scrum trainer. So I could not give them certified Scrum training. Therefore, they couldn't become certified Scrum Masters. That's why it failed, right? Because everybody knows that a course that lasts 2 days can become and make you a master, right? That's where it failed, I guess, because they weren't certified. But they sell that to you, don't they? Oh yeah, come to our course and we'll do a certified Scrum Master course for you and you'll become a Scrum Master. And that will be valid for you everywhere, right? After 2 days. Some of these courses are 2 days. You're going to become a master? How many teams have you worked with? 0. How much experience do you have in Scrum? About a month. But you're going to become a master, certified master. Okay, fair enough. Now, how many of you work with Scrum again? How many of you like working with Scrum? How many of you feel that Scrum hasn't worked that well for you? Okay. A couple of people. One of the issues that Scrum has is what they call the time box thing, right? The problem with Scrum is that and I've had this experience myself, that you spend a week on Scrum, and in that week, you have 1 day to do iteration planning, for instance. So you spend the whole day planning poker, and you get those nice little cards that throw on the table and say coffee break or beer or whatever, right? And then you have another day, which is the retrospective to see where you screwed up, right? And then you have 3 days where you've planned everything beautifully. But of course, we all get our estimations wrong, so it all goes out of sync. But after a while, we kind of get it all okay, and then suddenly the bugs come in, and you're like, oh shit, what do I do now? Because I didn't plan for this bug. And then you go to like another course that says to you how to plan your bugs in your sprint iterations, right? And you get a certification to now know that you can, you're certified to plan bugs, right? And the problem ends up that you spend so much involved in this process that you actually just wonder, when the hell did I code, right? And I was so focused on, am I going to break this iteration? Interactions and people over processes and tools, right? And the customer comes back to you and says, I've got a critical bug. No, sorry, man. I can't put that critical bug in this iteration because it's going to blow it all to hell. And you don't know what this is going to cost us, right? But okay, it's okay. We'll still do it, right? Part of this, they said, well, it's because of this time box thing, right? We're limited to time boxes, and we start to say, okay, we're going to do 10 things in a week, and I'll pull in 5 tasks that I've estimated. And people started to say, well, this time box thing here of a week or 2 weeks or a month isn't really working out well. And it's not going to do very well. And that's where we went into lean, right? And we started to get motivation from companies such as Toyota. The Toyota said, yeah, we do a lean pull-based system where we pull tasks, we don't push tasks. It gives us better flow. As we do things, we bring more things in. And we don't get bogged down with knowing that I've got these 10 items to do this week. And I just do a pull system, and then I'll do continuous deployment, and everything is wonderful. So nowadays, Scrum is 2 years ago. Now, if you are a hipster in the agile sense, you should be doing Kanban. Scrum is no longer valid because Kanban is a pull system, right? It allows you to pull things in, do things as you can, and just make sure you don't block things. Back in the old days, we used to do something similar. It was called getting shit done. Now they call it Kanban. And you get your little boards. And the first thing that you do is find software with a board. And you come up with these sophisticated schemes that I saw some software the other day that actually, this was hilarious. It would print out little cards that you would stick on the board. Then there would be a camera that would take a picture of the cards, scan it, transmit it to some other team in some other location that would then print out those cards so that someone could go to the board and move it. I'm like, are you kidding me? I mean, this is the level of stupidity that we've reached. We have nothing better to do with our time and money than to come up with inventive nonsense on how to... Yeah, we used to use an Excel sheet with a little column that would say, done, right? Or a little tick box. But no, now we need boards, right? We sell a product, it's called UTrack. Oh, I won't look at UTrack. Why? It doesn't have a board. Okay, fine. Yeah, whatever. The board is visual. We've now added a board to UTrack. Yeah, everyone's, oh, now I'll look at UTrack. Oh, anyway. So, this is hilarious. There's an actual website. It's an organization called the Limited Whip Society. I think they like to whip each other. No, it's, you know what whip is? Work in progress. That means limit the amount of work you can do as to not bog yourself down, not to feel overwhelmed, right? And I love the little logo. I've seen this a lot of times. Yes, we can ban, which is a play on the words of Obama. Yes, we can. Now, a couple of weeks ago, Obama came out and said, well, you know, we really didn't. We were going to, but I never said it was going to be in 4 years, right? So give me another 4 years, and then we can, right? Or like Jon Stewart was doing on The Daily Show, he's like, well, it could have been worse. Yeah, we could have been in waterfall, right? But now we're in Kanban. And we'll sign up to this whip society. And this gets rid of this time box, right? It gets rid of this concept of I'm now scoped down to a week or 2 weeks, and I'll just do things as I can, which makes common sense, right? It is common sense. But then I thought to myself, this is interesting because from one side, psychologically, we have an issue when we are boxed to a certain amount of time. I mean, we all have that problem, right? Right? If I've got a bug to fix and I've got 2 hours to do it because the customer is waiting, how many of you sweat? We all sweat. We've all been there, right? But at the same time, we're saying we don't like that because it kind of puts too much pressure on us, and we're delicate primadonnas, right? We need to be in the flow. We need to be in the zone. We need to be creative. So don't stress me out, yeah? And we don't want the time box. But then people start to have problems, it seems, with doing things, getting things done. How many of you have issues with getting things done? Yes, but don't worry about that. Don't worry, I've got a solution for you. It's called the Pomodoro, right? How many of you have heard of the Pomodoro technique? So basically, the Pomodoro technique is whereby you take a kitchen Pomodoro, you know, these timers, that is used to count egg, how long the egg used to boil or how long you used to put your lasagna in the oven. And what it does is you set it to 25 minutes, which is the standard amongst the industry. You set it to 25 minutes, and during those 25 minutes, you don't interrupt yourself with things that you shouldn't, and you get work done, right? This originates from another thing, which is, you might have heard of it. It's called discipline, right? And basically, what we're doing here is we're taking our discipline and we're putting it in the hands of a tomato. But it's okay, because this is not an easy task. It requires a lot of work. I mean, the whole twisting of that tomato is hard. But don't worry, because there's already software that simulates a tomato. You don't have to go and buy a real tomato. And there's distributed versions of that software, so your wife can see how many minutes of that tomato is left before she barges in, right? Or your husband. And to make sure that you get it right, there's a certification program. I kid you not. I am not kidding. I think it's something like $2,000 or $3,000, and you become a certified Pomodoro master. And it doesn't stop there. They actually have their own world. And in this world, you can be a user, a reporter, a writer, a speaker, angel, master, player, or a team. So you can be part of a Pomodoro team, right? You can all walk around with your little tomatoes, or your egg timers. I honestly, sometimes when I read this, I'm like, am I old-fashioned? Am I getting old? Or are people just losing it? Right? But I thought, from one side we have Scrum, which is about time boxing, which people say is an issue. And from the other side we have Kanban, which is about removing time boxes, which is, it's a pull-based system. It's much better. It lets me flow. I have this whip. And then we have Pomodoro, which is again about time box, which is saying discipline, get things done. So why not put these things together? And if you have Scrum and you have Pomodoro, what do you think you could come up with? Think of something. Give me a word. What would you call a combination of Scrum and Pomodoro? Anybody? I'll give you a free ReSharper t-shirt, which you can even get at the booth, but just... Scrumadora. Fantastic idea. And apparently I wasn't the first one that had it. Right? I kid you not. That's an article on InfoQ dated 4th of June that is about Scrumadoro. I didn't capture the whole screen, but the first comment is like, oh, you have to be kidding me. Just go and die, please, right? Because this is the point of, this is just, you know, we have completely, I mean completely lost it, right? We have completely lost it. And I say that this is very similar to the timeshare industry. How many of you know what timeshare is? Timeshare is this mechanism by which it was a good idea, kind of like Agile. And the idea was that instead of you renting a property when you go abroad to a holiday place or buying a house, you would buy weeks, right? So, and this is where I come from. I won't mention the name because you'll all probably kill me, because right now we're kind of destroying the whole Europe. It's called Spain. And in Spain, there's a lot of timeshare, right? And basically, the idea is that you buy 2 weeks of an apartment. And then when you want to go on holiday, you call and you say, right, I want to go on holiday. And they're like, okay, where do you want to go? I want to go to Malaga. When? June. No, sorry, that's already booked. But you can go to, you know, I don't know, Birmingham. Why would I go to Birmingham in June? Well, because Spain is booked. Okay, well, I'll go to Birmingham. And that's how it happens, right? You buy into this fantasy, and then it just kind of like never works. But what happens, like these corporations that do timeshare, they have limited stock. And if you take the number of houses, multiply it by 52 weeks in a year, there's only a certain amount of things you can sell, right? But timeshare moves a lot of money, right? There's a lot of money in timeshare. So they're like, how can we solve this problem? Because we don't have any more houses. Oh, I know. We'll switch from weeks to this other thing called points, right? Kind of like hours and points in the planning poker. We'll switch to points. And now we'll say to the customers that your 2 weeks has now become 2,000 points. And for you to book in Malaga in June, you need 2,500 points. But don't worry, we've got a good deal that we can buy back your 2 weeks and give you 2,000 points and give you an extra 500 bonus for only 15,000 euros, right? I'm not kidding you, right? This goes on. And then when the points die, then it's called PACs. And when the PACs die, then it's called the Revolutionary Timeshare Foundation Package, right? It's kind of, they come up with these words and these, new terminology to sell you the same crap over and over again, right? And I find that very similar to our industry. We come up with these buzzwords to sell you the same nonsense over and over again. On top of that, we give you certified courses on it as well. Yeah? So it's very similar in what we do. This is fantastic. The whole point of Agile was to simplify things. Once we have done the certification, once we've come up with the things, we now make a framework. This is the Scaled Agile Framework. This tells you what Agile is about and how to scale Agile. Right? And the problem is that the premise of process, what was it? Oh no, it wasn't process, was it? It was interaction and people over processes and tools. And we've lost so much focus, and we're focusing so much in the process and constantly trying to find new ways to improve the process and focusing so much on the process that we're losing sight of what actually we're trying to accomplish with this process. And every time when something doesn't go right, what do? We blame the process, and we look to the next best thing. And that next best thing is going to help us solve the problem, right? But there's people solving problems without having all this nonsense. And I am not saying that Agile is nonsense, far from it. It has had massive improvements over the way we used to work with things such as waterfall or CMMI. But I do find pathetic and nonsense when I read, for instance, that a company has obtained the first certification in Europe of Agile CMMI. How the hell do you do Agile CMMI? Really? CMMI is all about documentation, right? If you want to go to the toilet, you got to document it in CMMI. Then you'll make level 5. And you're telling me you're Agile. Because we slap this Agile keyword onto everything, and it's all okay. Go to a conference that is about Agile. There are specific conferences in the US, which I will mention, that is all about Agile. And every single booth, including ours, has the word Agile. Because if you don't have the word Agile, it won't sell. Especially to people that are managers and top deciding people. It won't sell. And the problem is that it's just, this is the conference I was talking about. At Agile conference in the US, which is the big conference by the Agile Alliance, a lot of the founding members were the people that wrote the manifesto, there was no software talks. There was no talks about code, right? And again, I want to make this very clear that in our industry, there are more men than women, for whatever reason, right? At Agile, there were probably around 50 to, I would say 50%, I don't know exactly, but I saw pretty much the same amount of men as women. What was this saying to us? That it's not about our industry? Well, it was. But the reality is that at a developer conference where there is a lot of coding, there is a higher tendency of men. At Agile, I saw a higher tendency of equals. Why? Because majority of the sessions, if not all, weren't focused around code. There was actually no code. So the year 2010, Uncle Bob actually said, there is no sessions on coding at Agile conference. So there was a disconnect. There was a disconnect from Agile to software development. Right? There wasn't. There was an absolute disconnect. And people implement Agile, and why does Agile fail? If you're doing Agile and you don't do unit testing, if you don't do integration testing, if you don't write clean code, you're not going to be successful. You're not. And don't kid yourself, you're not. Because you respond to change. Of course you respond to change. Everybody responds to change. It's called the company, the customer's going to pay you. Yeah? I'll come with a check and say, here's 10,000 euros. Are you going to implement that for me? Sure. But where with Agile, the purpose was to implement a series of techniques so that that change would cost you less. If you're not implementing those techniques, it's not going to cost you less. So whereas before you would make 8,000 euros profit, with Agile the idea was to make 9,000, versus 8,000 cost, now it would cost you 2,000. Everybody responds to change, and yet so many organizations implement Agile, and they do all the Kanban, they do everything, but they don't put the software practices into effect. And then when that fails, they'll blame Scrum, and then they'll hop up to the next best thing, which is Lean. And when that fails, well, don't worry. I promise you that from now to the next 5 years, there will be a new methodology. It will be. Okay? Because our industry has to continue. And I made this comment, and apparently it got people pissed off at the Agile conference, but it's true. The problem with Agile, as the problem with many things, in quotes, is that it's become an industry. There is so much money now revolving around Agile that it's now become an industry. And yet, if you think about the premise of Agile, most of it is basically common sense. It really is. It's nothing more than just common sense. It's applying common sense. But we drift away into the whole buzz and the whole process and the whole beauty of other things, and we just forget about what it was meant to be about. And then, of course, we've extended this to other markets. Now we get marketing coming up with the Agile Manifesto, right? That's a funny one, because I could be classified as someone that's in marketing, right? And, yeah, anyway. But it's not all bad. How many of you know this guy? Uncle Bob. Fantastic guy, right? And he was, the article that was about the disconnect between Agile and code was partially from him, because he was saying that at this conference, there is a disconnect. There is no longer sessions about code. It's all about management, it's all about people, it's all about process, and more process, and more process, and more process, and more process. While all the facts about the people is great, but where is the code? This is still a software conference. It's not a marketing Agile conference, right? Although it felt like one. And that is in line with craftsmanship. How many of you have heard the term of craftsmanship, right? That is about caring about your code. It's about caring about what you do in your code. It's about writing clean code, right? Code that is maintainable, code that is understandable, code that if you look at it in 6 months, you'll be able to understand what that means. And that is in line with the solid principles. Which goes back to the poster, which goes back to the company that I went to. Again, I teach them about solid principles. Next week I go back and they got a poster of solid principles on the wall with all the different principles, with all the different pictures. Okay, it's great to remind yourself what you're doing, but don't get carried away with that. It's about unit testing. A lot of times people forget that, right? And that's why a lot of our projects fail. It's about test-driven development. These are the things that don't seem to play such an important role in Agile. How many of you write clean code? How many of you do unit testing? How many of you do test-driven development? How many of you do Agile? Did I offend anyone when I said CMMI? You have to... Anyone does CMMI? Agile CMMI or just CMMI? Okay. And this craftsmanship, what happened? It led to the principle wars, right? The solid principles. And then we started to have debates after debates after debates after debates of, oh, you shouldn't do this. You shouldn't apply single responsibility. Single responsibility is bad. Single responsibility is good. Open close is bad. It's not a thing. And it's, again, because we seem to take things to extreme. There is no middle ground of let's just be pragmatic. Single responsibility principle is great. If for one reason or whatever I have broken it, nothing's going to happen, right? And we always have these discussions of should we apply or shouldn't we apply? And again, we are losing the focus of what craftsmanship is trying to teach us. It's about doing clean code. It's about following a series of practices. It's not about getting lost in the process of clean code. It's not about not shipping your code because you want it to be sparkling clean. And we have that. We have people that start to have in their teams added cost and extra cost because they're so obsessive about these principles and these clean codes and about unit tests and about 100% test coverage, which is ridiculous because test coverage has never been about percentages, right? That they end up costing more and shipping less and ending up with more frustration. But there's a solution to that as well. It's the next big thing. It's called continuous delivery. Okay? Which in our old days, it was just called give the customer what he wants. Testing acronym wars. This is another one. Test-driven development. Acceptance test-driven development. Behavior-driven development. Framework-driven development. This last one is the one that says, ooh, I just learned TDD. And you know what I'm going to do? I learned it last week. This week, I'm going to write a framework, so I'll become rich and famous, which you don't, right? But I'll write a framework. And without knowing what I'm doing, I'm going to write a new framework. And I'm going to promote my framework. And then I'm going to write bullshit on my framework, saying that if you want to do behavior, you have to use these words. And if you want to do non-behavior, you have to do these words. Confusing people even more on something that you don't have a firm grip on. There are 101 frameworks out there on TDD, BDD. You go to the documentation, it says, if you're doing TDD, use this parameter. If you're doing BDD, that is nonsense. TDD and BDD are the same thing. It was never about frameworks. It was about the core concept of communication. It was about communicating to the customers. It was about the customer being present at meetings when you talk about what you want. It's about asking questions. It's about saying, why the hell do you want this feature? And if he says, because you asked that question 5 times. You've heard of the 5 whys. That's what BDD was about, right? Dan North, and he even agrees with me on this, the reason he came up with his own framework called JBehave was because he wanted people to disconnect from the fact of thinking that this was about test. It was about writing specifications for your programs. But what do? We create frameworks. We create frameworks like Cucumber. Right? And then we create the version in .NET, which I can't remember what it's called, but we create Cucumber for .NET. Yeah, and then we say, oh, Cucumber's so easy, I can give my customer, he can write the specifications out, send it to me, and I'll implement it. Yes, except if this was about communication, where did that go? If your customer is writing the specs and handing them over to you. But promoting these frameworks, we're just promoting inaccuracies. And again, we're losing focus. We're worrying so much about this whole, am I doing BDD? Am I doing TDD? Is my ATDD coming correctly in the position between BDD and TDD? What section of my code should be TDD? What section of my code should be BDD? That we're losing focus. That's why, have you seen this guy? If you go to that website, it's called programming-thatword.com. He's fed up with everything, right? He's like, enough of this crap. Let's just write code. And again, this is an extreme, and he's using it in an extreme tense as well. But he's got a point, right? It's just like it's become too much. We're focusing so much on the wrong aspects as opposed to what we're really here to do. What are we here really to do? I asked that question once of a customer of mine, and he said to me, to ship the next version. I said, no. What are we here to do? To make money? I said, no. What are we here to do? I don't know. What are we here to do? We're here to solve problems, right? Because as I said, no one's here for the money, right? We're here because we love the challenge, because we love our profession. We're not here to ship the next version. Interactions. Communication, a prerequisite to interactions. Yes? Everybody says that. Everybody knows that communication. How many of you would agree with me that one of the biggest problems in software is communication? Right. Have you heard communication is key? Yes. Communication is key. Have you heard this one? There are only 2 problems in software, and it's communication. Right? Because there is. It is a big problem. Right? What are you doing to improve your communication? Exactly. As a software developer, what are you doing to improve your communication? Who are you communicating with? Well, I'm communicating with my team. Okay. What do? They're software developers. Okay. So you're kind of on the same brain wave. Yeah. Okay. Who else do you communicate with? My wife or my husband. How's that going for you? Nah, it's not working out. Why not? She doesn't understand me. Imagine if my spouse was a programmer. Oh, I would be in heaven. We could have these long conversations about Python and JavaScript. Then she would really understand me. Have you ever considered for a moment that maybe you have a problem communicating outside of your comfort zone, which is your fellow developers, because you don't really communicate outside of your comfort zone, that is your fellow developers? And I don't mean with your mother, okay? Now, there is a myth, or is it not a myth, that we are introverts, right? And introverts have this thing of, you know, oh, they're very bad at communication. They're not, right? As introverts, we're not bad at communication. We just don't like small talk, right? We just don't. We don't like small talk. We're not bad at communication, yeah? This is Hacker News. How many of you go on to Hacker News? Yeah. This is like, you know, your average day on Hacker News. And as a story, you know, is important, it gets voted up, and then there's comments on it. And most of the people on Hacker News are hackers. They're developers, right? And we have conversations going on. And we have a lot of comments on conversations going on, right? This is a topic about a language of semicolons. I don't know if you ever read a few months ago how there was this big battle going on in the JavaScript space about there was a semicolon missing in one of the libraries that some guy had written, and Douglas Crockford, one of the fathers of, not fathers of JavaScript, but one of the guys that have contributed most to JavaScript, says, well, your library is incorrect because that semicolon is missing and it's stupid code. And the whole internet went haywire, right? And there was discussions after discussions after discussions after points and points and points. And this is just a fragment. So on Java, on semicolons, 107 comments here, 142 here, 221, 136. We don't have an issue communicating. We love communicating. And we love making our point. And we love to make sure that we're always right. Yes? Customer is stupid. I am correct. And here is why. Right? And it's normally written in pseudo-programming language so that it's all logical. Yes? You've heard the joke of, you know, go to the supermarket and buy me 6 eggs. And if they have, go to the supermarket and buy me bread. And if they have eggs, buy me a dozen. And the husband comes back with a dozen pieces of bread. Right? That's how we think. Okay, you didn't get that joke. Never mind. We hate small talk. We like to talk about things that are important to us. Someone said to me, when I did this talk previously, he said to me, what do you have against small talk? I said, what do you mean? He's like, why don't you like the language? This is what happens when you don't step outside of your kind of field. Right? Small talk is not the language. That one you spell together. Okay? But we hate small talk. And I hate that small talk, right? I detest going to birthday parties of my children. Because I'm the only software developer in the class, right? The rest of the parents they have these fancy jobs, right? They're pilots and, I don't know, chefs and this and that. And a lot of people in real estate. And one of the issues that we have in Spain, which is we very passionate about football, which I hate. And so if I can't speak about football, right, I don't know what to speak about, right? And how many of you have ever had that problem? Go to a party and like, oh, what am I going to speak about? I don't know what to talk about. Yeah, exactly. I'm actually thinking of, at some point, maybe moving over to Germany. Then I won't have that problem because I don't speak German, so I'll just shut up, right? But I hate that small talk, right? So I don't know what to speak about, yeah? And it's kind of like, well, and I try and force myself to go because I think I can't communicate to anyone that's not inside my field, and I need to, right? Why do I need to do that? Because I don't know if I'm even comprehensible. I mean, I don't know. Do you know if you're comprehensible? A lot of times I talk to my wife and she doesn't understand me. Seriously. She's like, you just don't make sense. I'm like, how can I not make sense? It's very logical, right? Because we don't often express emotions. We don't feel things that we need to feel, right? And I find that incomprehension reflects on work and complexity in your code. If you don't know how to communicate, how is that coming over in your user interface? How is that coming over in your code? Right? Back in the old days, the best thing a software developer could do was what? Write complex code. Yeah? It was like my code no one can read. That's how good it is. Now we're kind of realizing that actually that's not very good for the whole team. Right? Complexity in our user interface. This, I criticize our own stuff. This is U-Track. Right? Do you know what that is? U-Track can connect to TeamCity to poll to see if there's any updates, any check-ins. That is how you define the frequency by which you want the polling to occur. And I talked to the developer, Dimitri, awesome guy. I'm like, Dimitri, what's this? He's like, that's how you define the frequency. I'm like, where's the little spin bars? You know, with the 2 hours. He's like, that's more flexible. I'm like, what is it? It's a quartz Java doc. It's a regular expression for defining intervals. I'm like, well, how does it work? He's like, there's a link on the bottom, click it. So I click it and it goes to like this page full of like regular expressions. I'm like, this is the best you could come up with. Yeah, but it's very flexible. I just want to put 5 minutes. I don't give a shit about flexibility. We'll just put 0 point. I'm like, you don't get it, do you? He's like, what do you mean? I'm like, put a freaking spin clock there. Okay, fine. It's just nobody else on the team complained. And you know, we'll just say it loud. Yeah, this is like, I can't connect. This is funny. This is outlet.lenovo.com. Please select 2 or more items to compare, asshole. This is the bottled up frustration that we have as developers because we don't learn to talk to people. Yeah? And this leads to things like, I don't like stupid customers. I get nervous when I talk to customers. Customers don't understand me. Well, no shit, you know? If you explain something to someone and they don't get it, and you explain a second time and they don't get it, it's your fault. It's not their fault. It's that you don't know how to express yourself correctly, right? And programmers think alike. They're all arrogant, self-centered primadonnas, right? Don't deny it. I'm one as well, okay? Not all people in the world are like us. And I'm not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing. But in any case, they're not like us. And we need to be able to talk to these people. When we say we don't understand marketeers, we don't understand salespeople, we don't understand customers, it's because we're not putting an effort in to understand them. We should. It's our fault. It's not their fault. It's our fault. We should. And if it's mutual fault, well, let's take the first step. Let's be the people that say, okay, let's us make an effort to become better at communication. Let's not just say, oh, communication is key. And customer disconnect is dangerous. Because when you start to disconnect from your customers because you don't understand them correctly, you start to not see eye to their needs. And if you're a product company that sells products, it's a problem. Right? Because now you're starting to diverge into an area that your actual consumers don't care about. And you can start to lose sales. If you are a company that is focused on making solutions for your users, you start to get very angry users. And you start to get inefficiencies in the company. And all this is caused by a disconnect, which is caused by lack of communications, which is caused by Not enough communications and not enough effort to communicate. And again, we just say, yep, communication is key. Yep, part of the agile process. But hey, well, we won't worry about that. We'll worry about how to do a Scrum board virtually. Then, of course, there's knowledge-driven design, or as others call it, CV-driven design. Yeah? The church of technology fashion, which is a great term, right? I mean, if you remember Clipper, Delphi, Mongo, DB, .NET, Ruby, JavaScript, Node, Rails, CouchDB, Subversion, Git, C#, PHP, VB. All of these technologies come and go. And when we were doing Subversion was the best thing in source control, right? It was the best thing. Everybody said, oh, Subversion is the best thing. Now if you do Subversion, they laugh at you. You're still on Subversion? Dude, jump over to Git. Git and GitHub is like awesome, right? Or Mercurial. TFS? Well, TFS, okay. TFS is Team Foundation, or I like to call it Team Frustration Server. But that's a specific example, which a bad example. But it's like now we start subjected to social and peer pressure that you're doing your application in .NET, dude, that's dead. Move on to JavaScript. It's so much faster, it's so much more efficient, it's so much rad, and you don't even need an IDE, you just do it in a text editor. It's all cool. Yeah? Oh, JavaScript? Oh, that's, no. Now it's Python. Oh, are you using SQL Server? No. You need to be using CouchDB. Document databases, no SQL. That's the way to go. And you start to like, oh, what, but you just told me last week that I should do CouchDB. Yeah, but you know what happened? Well, I also told you to use Ruby. Yeah, you did. Yeah, well, you know why? Because you know Twitter? Yeah, they were using Ruby. Yeah? Okay, so should I use it? Yeah. But what they forget to tell you is that at some point, Twitter said, you know this Ruby, and this is actually documented on the internet, on InfoQ, Twitter switched back to Java, not because of speed, primarily because they found that statically typed languages were better in terms of maintainability and in terms of newcomers to the team. But they won't tell you that because it doesn't go in line with their hidden agendas, right? And you start to get this social and peer pressure that, oh, what you're doing is so outdated, right? And you need to use the latest in frameworks, the latest in innovation, right? And when we do this, do we ask the technical questions? Sorry, the non-technical questions about why we're adopting new technology. The non-technical questions. Do we see whether the benefits are outweighing our learning experience? Because every new framework that we use, we're not going to do it properly the first time. The first time you use Entity Framework and Hibernate, everything you did it wrong. You learned, which is great. You accumulate knowledge, but you evaluate that when you start that new project with that fancy new technology. Last year, 2 years ago, it was WCF. Now it's not. Now it's Web API. And tomorrow it'll be something else. WCF, oh, that's so outdated. And I'm telling you, I wrote a book on it. Or incorrect implementations. Do we even evaluate the legacy we leave behind? Testing frameworks. There's so many testing frameworks. MS Test, no good. NUnit was so last year. Now it's XUnit. XUnit is no good. MSpec, that's the good one. The poor guy that comes over in 6 years to maintain that crap, he's like, where do I even get the binaries? Where do I go to download the source? Where do I go to download documentation? Oh, there's a 404. Oh, that framework was so old. And we start to change frameworks, start to change things for minor little things that, you know, it's exciting for me. I get to work with new technology. Great. But what about to your business? What about to your company? What about to your users? What benefit does it add there? Do we even ask these questions? No, because it helps me evolve, which is fine. But we need to ask these questions as well. And we start to focus so much on the technology and things that we want to learn that we forget to wonder about whether, you know, this is actually adding any value. All right? But anyway, that's it. I'm done with the complaining. Right? That's it. No more. But I do want to say that we have one of the biggest, I think one of the best professions worldwide, right? I mean, really, seriously, if you think about it, we have a very challenging profession. You're in Germany. Germany is very big in manufacturing, yes? And this is a manufacturing line. And you imagine, and with no disrespect to anybody that's working in manufacturing or any other profession, but you imagine every day you come to work, every single day you come to work and you have to do the same thing over and over and over again, which is take a chair, put it in a car, use a nut and bolt, take a chair, put it in a car, tighten the bolt. Every single day. Every single day. And yet, we don't have to face that, right? We have a profession that every bug is a new experience. It is. But we don't think about it like that. But every bug is a new experience. Every framework that we learn, if we have to, if it outweighs the benefits, is a new experience. It's a new thing we learn. That guy putting that seat in that car doesn't learn anything that day. Nor does the person that does any other kind of profession that is monotonous and the same thing over and over again. We are in a situation where we can learn and we can do things that impact people's lives, right? We don't do these things, we don't have an impact on people's lives because we use the next best framework. We impact people's lives by making their lives nicer, by making their lives easier, right? If it's in the health system, if it's in medical systems, it's by making things that save people's lives, which software still does. It's about improving people's lives. It's about, there was a session at NDC where a friend of mine was using a helmet that would detect the brain waves to drive some software. And that software could be used for people that were blind, for people with disabilities. These are the things that we can have an impact on people's lives with, right? We can change lives. And like a friend of mine said, and this is his slide to Aral, he said, we have to feel like Superman in the sense of feeling good about ourselves, right? In the sense of when I use something that's nicely, he was in the context of using something that's nicely designed in a user interface, it makes you feel like Superman, right? But we also can make ourselves feel like Superman because we help others. And that's what it's about. Innovation is about finding ways to help people's lives and make their lives better. And it's not about languages and it's not about frameworks unless you're specifically focusing developer that is trying to innovate to make their language easier so that they can make other people's lives easier. But on the whole, as enterprise developers, as hipsters, as SharePoint debuggers, our goal is to help people, right? And we shouldn't forget that because it's a real powerful weapon that we have and it's a real amazing profession that we have. Oh, I forgot. I was meant to add some slides with lol cats because apparently we have this obsession with cats as well and unicorns. And I found out why. It's official. Cats diagnosed as primadonnas. That's why we love cats so much. But I thought, you know what? Since you guys love unicorns, I'll find the best damn picture of a unicorn I could. And that's when we're like, we completely lost the plot. Okay? So I'm done. And you guys have 5 minutes to get to your food early. And I won't take any questions because I know you're all hungry. Thank you very much.